I welcome everybody who's come to Ahavas Chesed, and I welcome all those who are listening remotely. I know that you either came here or you tuned in to see Rabbi Silverman. I must disappoint you. Rabbi Silverman will not be here tonight. His middle son is getting married, and he has journeyed to Tennessee to the wedding. So he has left me as his surrogate, a poor one at that. But fortunately, our service will be bolstered by the songs sung by Yehuda. So this is a guitar Shabbat. So you won't have to listen to me sing, which is a blessing. So I'd like to start on page 101 of the Siddur with Ma Tovu. And this is the traditional recitation when people come to the synagogue, because it says, the translation, "How lovely are your dwellings, Jacob. As for me, your great kindness, I enter your house. I bow toward your holy sanctuary." So you can see that this has been adapted to be the recitation upon entering the synagogue. And so we will start with Ma Tovu. So now that we've entered the sanctuary, we now want the angels to come perch on our shoulders and help us. So we're going to turn to page 5 and sing Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom.
So now that we've made friends with the angels and they are sitting on our shoulders, let's turn to page 11, and we're going to do L'chu Neranena, where we're singing to Adonai and raising our voice in song. Let's just finish up this Psalm 95 in English. So starting on page 11, after the first 4 lines, and then we'll continue to the end. And so let's read responsibly in English. Great is Adonai, a greater sovereign than all other deities. God's hands formed the earth's deep. Mountain crests, too, are God's work. The sea is God's, for God made it. Dry land was fashioned by God's hands. Come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai who formed us. For Adonai is our God, and we are God's flock, sheep in God's caring hands. If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted like the people at Meribah, like that time at Massah in the desert, when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are a people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my way. So in anger I swore that they would not enter my rest. Let's turn to page 18 and read the end of Psalm 98 in English. Call out to Adonai, all the earth. Break out in joyful singing. Sing to Adonai to the music of the lyre. Lyre and voices making music together, with horns and shofar cries, trumpet the presence of the sovereign Adonai. Let the sea and all that is in it roar, the earth and all who inhabit it thunder. Let rivers clap hands while mountains sing in harmony. Greeting Adonai, who comes to judge the earth, judging the world with justice and the nations with truth. Turn to page 20, and we'll do for Romemu. It's the last couple of lines at the little arrowhead. And so the translation is, exalt Adonai our God and bow down at God's holy mountain, for Adonai our God is holy. So we now turn to L'cha Dodi, which really is sort of, I consider it to be the anthem of Friday night. And we're going to do the first two stanzas on page 23 and the last stanza on page 25. Seated. We turn to page 28, and let's say together the end of the Psalm 92. That's on page the English side, page 28. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming, Adonai is upright, my rock, in whom there is no flaw. The Baruch Hu is on page 39A. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMorach. Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Vayed. Seated, and let's say the first bracha. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, who creates day and night, who rolls light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Tzevaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. El Chai V'Kayam, Tamid Yimlok Aleinu Le'olam Vayed. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamarib Arabim. Ahavas Olam on page 40.
When wind stirs her leaves, song of the earth when rain soothes its thirst, song of the sea when waves are set free, song of the sky when hummingbirds fly. Ahavas Olam, Ahavas Olam, thank Yisrael, Ma'ata. All the world sings to you, the world sings to you, all the world sings to you, the world sings to you. Song of the trees when wind stirs their leaves, song of the earth when rain soothes its thirst, song of the sea when waves are set free, song of the sky when hummingbirds fly. Ahavas Olam, Ahavas Olam, thank Yisrael, Ma'ata. All the world sings to you, the world sings to you, all the world sings to you, the world sings to you.
Batachaltas, Sia Mimeno La'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohei Ba'amo Yisrael. Page 41 for the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'kol levavcha u'v'kol nafshecha u'v'kol nerdecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi metzavka al levavecha v'shinantam lebanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivteka b'beitecha uv'lefteka b'aderech uv'shokveka uv'kumecha u'kshatam liot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot b'einecha u'tavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'b'sharecha. So we'll continue in silence on page 42 or a passage of your choosing. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Page 44, L'mi Chamocha. Malkut karu benecha bokei yam lifnei Moshe zeili anu v'yamru Adonai imlo v'yolam v'ed v'nema ki pada Adonai et Yaakov u'galo miyad hazak mimenu baruch atah Adonai gal Yisrael. Ashkivenu on page 45. Ufrosh aleinu sukkot shalomecha baruch atah Adonai haporei sukkot shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. V'shamru on the top of page 46.
And Shabbat v'nafash, Shabbat v'nafash, Shabbat v'nafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, V'asod et ha-Shabbat le'torot ha-meritolah. U'bayom hashvi'ot. Oh man, I'm lost. Goodness gracious. Kishe shechani, Asadonai, Asadonai, et hashmayim ve'aretz, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, v'asod et ha-Shabbat le'torot ha-meritolah.
So we've spent the last 20 to 30 minutes sort of praising God, recognizing that at times He's a very benevolent spirit, but at other times He can be, he takes retribution if you are not following His precepts. This is the time of the service when you can actually speak to God. This is your time to telephone Him and tell Him what you really think. So we rise for the silent Amidah, which extends from page 47 to page 52. So we've just said, for some of us silently, the seven prayers of the Friday night service. But I think that there's one of the prayers, the seventh bracha, which is so important, and that's the one, the prayer for peace. And so I think that we should say that with gusto. And so Yehudi is going to help us.
Shalom Ra Yisrael Amma Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Ra Yisrael Amma Tasim Le'olam. Ki Ata Hu Melech Hador Lechol HaShalom. Ki Ata Hu Melech Hador Lechol HaShalom. Shalom Ra Yisrael Amma Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Ra Yisrael Amma Tasim Le'olam. V'tov einecha le'arech et amcha Yisrael v'kol ezer v'chol sha'ah Ishlomecha. Shalom Ra Yisrael Amma Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Ra Yisrael Amma Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam.
So as I mentioned at the beginning of the service, the rabbi is at his son's wedding in Tennessee. And in thinking about the wedding, I was just sort of reflecting on the ceremony that was going to take place. And we all know about the chuppah ceremony, where the bride and the groom are under the chuppah, and on one side are the bride's parents, on one side are the groom's parents, and then there's the rabbi. And they recite a whole bunch of blessings, and they sort of turn around each other, they walk around each other. And so I think the chuppah ceremony is well known to everybody. But there's actually another ceremony which occurs before the chuppah ceremony, and that's called the Badekin ceremony. Now, Badekin is a Yiddish word, B-A-D-E-K-E-N, Badekin. It's a Yiddish word that means to cover, that comes from the verb to cover. And in this ceremony, which is a very solemn ceremony that takes place just minutes before the chuppah ceremony, the groom, flanked by his father and by his future father-in-law, and the rabbi walk down to wherever the bride is. They go into the room, and the bride has her veil pinned up, so he sees her face. And after he sees her face, he unfastens the veil and pulls it down over her face so that her face now is obscured. And then she walks into the room for the chuppah. Now you know the reason for this Badekin ceremony, and it goes back to the time of Jacob. And you remember that when Jacob was working for his future father-in-law Laban, he had to work several years in the field to be betrothed to one of Laban's daughters, and he wanted to marry Rachel. But Laban, the scheming guy that he was, decided that he first wanted to marry his older daughter, Leah. And so the Leah was veiled, and Jacob didn't realize that it wasn't Rachel. And so he was married, and after the ceremony, she lifts a veil, and he sees that she's married, that he has married the wrong woman. And so what does he have to do? He has to work a few more years for Laban to win Rachel's hand in marriage. So the Bedekin ceremony is to assure the groom that he's marrying the right woman. So he has to see her face before the ceremony, and then once he sees the face, then he can cover the face with the veil. So it's actually a very important ceremony, as you can imagine, and it's rooted in the Bible. Okay, so some announcements for coming days. Actually, there are very few announcements because the rabbi's not in town, and so most of his offerings for next week are canceled, like Tanakh, Hebrew school, Spirit. So so you guys can play hooky. Tomorrow night, Havdalah service will go on as always, and it's at 7 o'clock. And tomorrow morning, obviously, is the Saturday morning service here at 10 o'clock. Okay, so now we turn to page 56 for the Aleinu, and we're going to be helped for this part of the service by Craig Taubman, who's going to sing the Aleinu for us. ושמו אחד. Turning to page 58 Kaddish, for Kaddish. And on this Friday in November, we honor the yortzites of the following individuals: Carrie Maya Hamanoff, Lena Levine, Molly Gerwich, Rebecca Sussman, Thomas Schultz, Seal Spindell, Molly Sagat, Rebecca Hirsch, Morris Brook, Nathan Segal, Bessie Dittman, Donald Lasner, Phil Ladd, Calvin Liebeskind, Louis Morningstar, Peter Leon Sussman, Samuel Goldreich, Lloyd Moklowitz, Alan Sherman, Claude Petty, Sylvan Sachs, Gertrude Mazel, Bunya Mishalov, Alexander Grodnick. Are there any other names to mention here in the shul or at home? So all those citing Kaddish, please rise. Yitkadal v'yishkadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma dibra kirutei v'yamlik malchutei, b'chayekon u'byomechon u'chayei dekor Beit Yisrael, ba'agala bizman karib v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mebarach v'yalam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitvar v'yipoman v'yitnaseh v'yitada v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudisha b'riku v'ela minkol v'yachata v'shirata tushbechata v'nehemata da'amiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrumav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Peace to all those who are in mourning. Okay, so we're about to conclude, and Yehuda has a new song, Open Hands.
So every once in a while, Rabbi Steve will say, "Hey, Yehuda, I'd like you to put something from the Siddur to music, or a psalm to music." And I always do my best to oblige. Whenever I write a new song, I found part of my process is I need to play it a few times live. There's a difference between practicing it by yourself and playing it live. So figuring out the intricacies and the ins and outs of the piece, playing it live is a part of that for me. It's a part of the writing process. So if I mess it up, you guys are just going to have to wait. This is from the Ashrei, and the English is the eyes of all look hopefully to you, and you provide them bread or nourishment in its proper time. Opening your hand, you satisfy with contentment all that lives. פוצע את שעתך ומשביע לכל הרצון, הרצון. The eyes of all earth go fillet to you. You provide them all with bread in its proper time. Opening your hand, you satisfy with contentment all it lives, all it is. Ein kol lecha yisaveru.
So thank you for joining us. I wish every one of you a happy Thanksgiving and take advantage of this great family holiday and Shabbat Shalom. And I'll tell you, the rabbi will be back next week. So come join us again.